Imagine living in a country where some people pay for private English lessons with live chickens. The going rate being 4 hours of English for 2 live chickens. Welcome to the culture and concept of kompenzacija, or compensation, which is something that drives the Croatian economy and life in Croatia. It has its roots in the fact that a lot of people didn't have money, and so they used to barter goods and services in order to help each other and to get by. And while the culture of bartering exists worldwide, there is something for me a little bit special about kompenzacija. I first came across it really when I was doing real estate about 20 years ago, and I went to see my lawyer one evening. And I was waiting for him to talk to his previous client, and they were having a long discussion about how to pay because the client didn't have any money, and he was looking for some kompenzacija, and he was a baker. And eventually, after about 20 minutes of going back and forth, they agreed the deal that the baker would pay the lawyer in bread and would bring 3 loaves of bread every single day for 4 years, and that way the bill would be paid. So when I moved into Dalmatia, I realized that this concept of kompenzacija was everywhere. My late father-in-law, who was a wonderful man, was an electrician, and quite often he would come home with something different. So maybe a whole bunch of fish, because a fisherman wanted electricity doing in his house and so on. And so this really was a culture that I really, really liked. And so initially, at least. And then when I started doing my own business and looking to get clients for my blogging, almost always the first question was, "Może mała kompenzacja?" Can we do a little bit of compensation? You would have hotels that would offer you rooms for the night in exchange for actually paying you cash. Restaurants would offer you food. Winemakers would offer you bottles of wine. And while this was lovely, it didn't actually put any food on the table back home or buy shoes for the kids and so on. And so it's become something of a standing joke for me. Everywhere I go, it's like, "Może mała kompenzacja." Legally, you still can do compensation. And I do have one client, for example, where we do a percentage in invoice and so on, and then we do a percentage in compensation. But that compensation is in the contract, it's regulated, and it's subject to PDB and all sorts of taxes. And we actually outline what our actual costs are for the compensation. So it is possible to do that. Going back to the chickens, I asked my colleague Katerina if she had any good examples. And she said that she used to be an English teacher. And there was one time this client couldn't pay, wanted to learn English, did 4 private lessons, and the going rate was 2 live chickens. I asked a couple of other people as well. One dentist said that he did a set of dentures for a live pig, for example. So it's quite I mean, from someone from Manchester, it's quite an unusual way, but it's a very, very common thing. And this isn't only Croatia. It's not only the Balkan region, Eastern Europe. It's more of a sort of socialist thing, I think. I used to live in Russia, near St. Petersburg, and one weekend we went out to the dacha with some friends of ours, and we said, "What can we bring?" And they said to bring some gradski dengi, which in Russian translates as city money. And that is, they wanted to bring us as many half-liter bottles of vodka as we could. And we were a bit confused, but we bought 6 or 7 bottles. And then when we got down there, in this tiny village of wooden houses where most people had left, there was no vodka, no alcohol, no cafe, no bar, nothing. And so the local people there would trade what they had, which was potatoes, apples, that kind of stuff. And they would bring 20 kilos. And then the exchange rate was half a liter of vodka for 20 kilos of apples or whatever. And they would come, they would carry them, they'd bring them to the house. They would give them the vodka, and they would sit in the front garden and just drink it all in one go and then just pass out stuff. And that's how it was. So kompenzacija, it's something that was very much alive 20 years ago. And really you could see how things go. Obviously it still exists and stuff, but as EU and regulation comes in, it's a bit less in evidence than it used to be. But what's your favorite compensation story from your time in Croatia?